to seek money and self and stuff. But David keeps saying, and Moses keeps saying, don't worry about the men who have money. They have to go to hell. Mary will say, look at that guy, look at the house. Boy, that's beautiful. I say, yeah, they have to go to hell one day. I say that just about every time she says that. You can't be rich and go to heaven. You can be a thief and go to hell. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. You don't understand anything. You don't do the truth. And he has no light in his life, does he? So when he's talking about light, he's talking about coming out of darkness to light. He's talking about prison. It's coming out of darkness to light. Look here in Psalms 56. Psalms 56. I mean, that's what this book is about. It's about the reality of life. Psalms 56, verse 13. 56:13. He always talks about, let's read a little bit before this. He's talking about crying out unto the Lord. He's talking about evil men, his enemies coming up against him. Let's read most of this. Let's read all of it. Be merciful unto me, O God, for man would swallow me up. He fighting daily oppresseth me. Does anybody feel that way? That's because you're living in the light and they're living in darkness. He's oppressing me every day. Mine enemies would daily swallow me up if they could. They want to destroy me. They're going to have me investigated. For they be many that fight against me, O thou most high. Do you think you're really having a hard time? You're not having a whole lot of a hard time, not compared to the... This is when David, when the Philistines took him to Gath. Now, when he was, if you'll notice, David is complaining of his enemies, and this is talking about when his Philistines took him to Gath in the superscription right above it. When David was taken to Gath, that's when he was running from Saul, and Saul was trying to kill him. And then later on, after he committed adultery and murder, then Nathan said, the sword will never leave your house, and his family starts raping and killing one another. And Amnon rapes his sister Tamar, which is Amnon is the oldest son of David, and then Absalom plots for 2 years to kill Amnon for raping Tamar, and then Absalom runs and flees the land, and then Joab talks David. Joab's David's nephew, and he talks David into coming back to Israel. He talks David into letting Absalom come back. Then as soon as Absalom gets back, he looks in the mirror and sees this beautiful looking guy, and he says, hey, I think the nation likes you best. And he's out there charming the people. They say, oh, we love you, Absalom. He says, I'll go kill my father and take over the land. And then Joab kills Absalom in the battle, and David has a hard time. He says, God, deliver me. He says, the reason I'm undergoing all this is because I am in the light and they don't like it. Then he says, mine enemies would daily swallow me up, for they be many that fight against me, O thou most high. What time I am afraid, I'll trust in you. Boy, if you read this with your problems in life in mind, it'll help you a lot. And in study, as I said, if you're going to study the Psalms, you've got to study the books of the law where Moses was writing concerning all of his episodes against his enemies. You got to read Exodus. You got to read Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, because that was the life of Moses. He dies at the end of Deuteronomy. In God will I praise his word. In God I have put my trust. I will not fear what flesh can do unto me. Now, boy, it takes a long time to come to that, doesn't it? Not to fear what flesh can do. And that's what the writer of Hebrews, 13th chapter, said, I will not fear what man will do unto me. The Lord is my helper. And we are afraid of men, aren't we? We're afraid we'll lose our job, afraid we make the wrong impression, afraid to tell them Christmas is pagan. They'll get mad and fire us, or somebody will get mad and give us a hard time. You stand for truth. You live in truth. You're living in the light. You don't have to be afraid of men.
The fear was on the History Channel.
Huh?
The fear was on the History Channel.
Yes, it is, isn't it? On the History Channel, I've been preaching on the nuclear suitcases right before we come to church. Eric called and he said, hey, they've got the nuclear suitcases they're talking about on the History Channel. talking about a nuclear explosion in the United States, and they talked about it as though it is going to happen. They was talking about the devastation it would bring about. Yeah, they're talking about setting off these nuclear bombs in America. Every day, wonder, isn't that something? I talk about it and they say, you're a fanatical nut. And I go down to books and Barnes and Noble and Books A Million and buy these books by these investigative journalists. And I'm talking about what our enemies will do to us. But you know what keeps me from being afraid? The truth. Knowing enough truth will keep you from being afraid. You say, well, Lord will deliver me. Lord, if they blow this up, Lord, let them plant right in the middle of this building while I'm in it. That way I won't feel it, and I'll get out of here, and I'll come to be with you. And I can sit back, and you can hide me in your pavilion while I watch you destroy the earth. That's what the generals would do. They would call out all the people and say, come out here. And they'd build these little wooden huts, and they would call them out, and they would get in those huts, and they'd watch the general go in and destroy it. And that's what, when Jesus comes back, we're going to sit back and watch him destroy the earth. Every day they wrest my words, all their thoughts are against me for evil. Does this sound familiar, folks? Huh? Does this sound like what you're going through with people in your life? They gather themselves together, they hide themselves, they mark my steps when they wait for my soul. People are trying to trap me all the time. They're just waiting for me to trip up one time so they can get me. And I've tripped up before. They say, aha, I knew you were human. Well, you could have asked me and I'd have told you that. Shall they escape by iniquity? In thine anger cast down the people, O God. Thou tellest my wanderings. Put thou my tears into thy bottle. I like that. Boy, that's good, isn't it? Put thou my tears into thy bottle. They would collect their tears from all the mournings. The Jews would do that, and they'd try to collect their tears in a bottle. And when I couldn't figure out how this woman was, in Luke the 7th chapter, was weeping and crying enough to wipe Jesus' feet with her tears. No, she had her tear bottle with her. And they considered that very precious, and usually it would be buried with them. It showed all the tears of their life. And of course, they couldn't catch all of them, but they'd catch some of them. And even if they had a little bit in there, that meant a lot of weeping and a lot of mourning. And she took those precious tears that she had in her tear bottle and poured them on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her tears. Something that she could have considered like an heirloom, some precious memory of all the mournings she had done. So he said, you'll put my tears in your bottle, and you'll remember them, Lord. Are they not in thy book? When I cry unto thee, then shall mine enemies turn back. This I know, for God is for me. In God will I praise his word. In the Lord will I praise his word. In God have I put my trust. Notice we put our trust and praise God. When we are in trouble with the world, we realize that God has ordained everything to be as it is. And we say, my trust in you, Lord. If you want me to die, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. I'll keep going. If I lose everything and all I got's a rock to sit down on, I'll go there and sit down on the rock and say, now let me see. I'll use the rock to sit down so I can think about it. Let me see. Now, where can I sleep tonight? And you won't worry about it. You'll just start making plans the best you can. I will not be afraid what man can do unto me. Thy vows are upon me. O God, I will render praises unto thee. For thou hast delivered my soul from death. Wilt not thou deliver my feet from falling, that I may walk before God in the light of the living. The whole idea is what delivers us from all of this oppression that we get from the world when we preach predestination and Christmas is pagan, is walk in the light. You don't quit the light and go back out in darkness like some people do. When you go back out in darkness, your life falls apart. It is only the light that will cause you to conquer and overcome your enemies. That's all. Nothing else will. If you can really get a hold of what the psalmist is talking about. Look at Psalm 78:14. Isn't it amazing? Here's what amazes me. God took a literal fire and led the children of Israel. He took a literal fire, and in darkness there was a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. When they were in darkness, he said, go where the fire is. There's light there. That was the only light that there was anywhere in the wilderness. There was a wilderness and a desert everywhere, all over what we call the Sinai Peninsula. And the only light out there, in that day and time, believe me, there was no electric lights all over cities, all over out here. One light was out there. That was it. He said, follow the light. He uses a literal light to illustrate a spiritual light. And there was safety in that light. And that's what he's saying here. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. Look over there at Exodus 13 chapter, Exodus 13. And we're still talking about coming out of darkness to light, coming out of prison to the light. When you're imprisoned in sin, isn't there just a drawing and a pulling towards sin, and I just can't stay away from it. I just got to have that. I got to have him. I got to have her. I've got to have that car. I got to have that house. I got to have this job. I got to have some applause. I have to have some recognition. Isn't that what we're looking for? In the flesh. And I said it at dinner today. I don't know how old you have to be or how far you have to be along to get a hold of this. Nobody has ever bought a 5-carat diamond ring, solitaire. I used to like solitaires, because it was all one big stone. Nobody ever bought a 5-carat solitaire diamond ring and ever got admiration from anybody. The only thing anybody ever got from a person that owned something like that was envy, jealousy. That's all. Oh, that's beautiful of me. And as soon as you get away from, I'm going to get me one bigger than that. Mary's kinfolks used to do that to each other. One would buy a big diamond ring, then the other would buy a bigger one, and the other would come back and say, I'm going to buy a bigger one. They wasn't admiring each other. They were competing with each other, jealous of one another. That's all you get from the world. The only way you get attention that you seek when you're in sin. The reason you buy the big fanciest car, the biggest fanciest ring, the biggest fanciest house is so you can get the attention from the world and get recognized and have people look up to you and like you. Isn't that what you're doing? Isn't that all it's for? Well, then you don't ever get that. Haven't you ever figured that out? You never get that. But the way you get the attention that you're really looking for is you crucify self and never talk about yourself and never think about yourself, and you think of others only, and people say, I like that kind of person. And what is it you like in a person? Somebody who loves you and cares about you and lifts you up and tries to pick you up when you're down? Or you say, well, what I really want you to have is a diamond ring so I can admire it. Nobody likes that, do they? Especially if you got a bigger one than they got. You can get the very attention you're looking for by crucifying self and looking out for everybody else. Favorite verse of mine there in Philippians the 2nd chapter. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. And I'll say this. Sit down and make a list of things that makes you really admire somebody and love somebody. I'll guarantee you a diamond ring's not in the list, and a new Cadillac's not in the list. It's people who are loving and kind and generous and self-effacing, and they put themselves down and they lift up others and they reach out for others, and they're always trying to help somebody else. You'll get the very attention you're looking for with the car and the diamond ring and the money and the position. You'll get that very attention by being selfless. Did you know that? That's amazing to me. I kept looking for that attention until I started saying, well, I can't get the attention. I'm a good guy.